from an expert shadows or highlights. From an expert shadows or highlights. Improve shadow and highlights detail. How to improve shadow and highlight details. By the way, the shadow and highlight command is one method for correcting photos with silhouetted images due to strong backlighting or correcting subjects that have been slightly watched out because they were too close to the camera flash. And the adjustment can also be used for brightening areas of shadow in an otherwise lit image. The shadow highlight and highlight commands doesn't simply lighten or dark an image, and it lightens or darkness based on the surrounding pixels, by the way, and the local neighborhood and local neighborhood in the shadows or highlights for this reason. And there are separate controls of the shadows and the highlights, and the defaults are set to fix images with backlighting problems, by the way. And the shadow and highlights command also has a mid-tone contrast slider and black clip option and white clip option for adjusting the overall contrast of an image, and a color correction slider for adjusting saturation. Note and be careful. Keep in mind that the shadow and highlight command applies adjustments directly to the image and will discard image information. And for non-destructive image editing, it's recommended that you use adjustment layers or camera raw. See adjustment and fill layers and introduction to camera raw. Look at a screenshot now. In the left side original image, and the shadow and highlights or highlights correction applied here now in the right side. And adjust image shadows and highlights. We have steps here now. Step number 1, you should choose image, then you choose adjustments, then you choose shadow or highlights. And make sure that the preview option is selected actually in the dialog box. And if you want the image to be updated as you make adjustments. Step number 2, adjust the amount of lighting correction by moving the amount slider or entering a value in the shadows or highlights percentage box. And larger values provide either greater lightening of shadows or greater darkness of highlights. And you can also adjust both shadows and highlights in an image. Step number 3, for final control, select show more options to make the additional adjustments. And note and be careful. To increase shadow detail in an otherwise will expose the image, try values in the 0 to 25% range for shadows amount and shadows tonal width. Step number 4, optional again. Click save as defaults button to save your current setting and make them the default setting for the shadow or highlights command. And to restore the original default setting, hold down the shift key while clicking the save as default button. Note and be careful. In this point, you can reuse shadow or highlight setting by clicking the save button to save the current setting to a file and later using the load button to reload them. For more information on saving and loading setting, see save adjustment setting and then after that click OK. What about shadow or highlight? Shadow or highlight command options. We have options here now. Amount. What's the meaning of amount? Amount is meaning that controls separately for the highlight and the shadow values in the image and how much of a correction to make in the image now. And note and be careful. Extreme amount values may lead to a crossover where what started as a highlight becomes darker than something that started as a shadow. This can make the adjusted image look unnatural. So what's the meaning of tonal widths? Tonal widths is meaning that controls the range of tones in the shadows or highlights that are modified, and the smaller values restrict the adjustments to the darker regions for shadow correction and the lighter regions for highlight corrections, and larger values increase the range of tones that are adjusted further into the midtones. For example, at 100%, the shadow tonal width slider affects the shadows the most, and the midtones are partially affected, but the brightest highlights are not affected, by the way. And tonal widths tonal whites varies from image to image and to large a value, may introduce halos around dark or light edges, and the default setting attempt to reduce these artifacts. Halos may also occur when the shadow or highlight amount values are too large, by the way. And tonal whites is set to 50% by default, by the way. And if you find that you are trying to lighten a dark subject, but the midtones or lighter regions are changing too much, try reducing shadow tone whites toward 0 so that only the darkest regions are lightened. And if, however, you want to brighten the midtones as well as the shadows, increase shadows tonal whites toward 100%. So what's the meaning of radius? Radius is meaning that controls the size of the local neighborhood around each pixel, and neighboring pixels are used, by the way, to determine whether a pixel is in a shadow or highlights. And moving the slider to the left specifies a smaller area, by the way, and moving it to the right specifies a larger area. And the optimum local neighborhood size depends on the image and is supposed to experiment with the adjustment. And if the radius is too large, the adjustment tends to brighten or darken the whole image rather than brightening the subject only, and is supposed to set the radius to roughly the size of the subject of interest in the image, by the way, and experiment with different radius setting to obtain the best balance between subject contrast and differentiate brightening or darkening of the subject compared to the background. And so what's the meaning of brightness? Brightness is meaning that adjust the brightness in a grayscale image. This adjustment is available, by the way. This adjustment is available only for grayscale images. And moving the brightness slider to the left is darkness and a grayscale image, and moving the slider to the right lightness a grayscale image. So what's the meaning of midtone? Midtone contrast. Midtone contrast is meaning that adjusts the contrast in the midtones and move the slider to the left to reduce the contrast and to the right to increase the contrast. And you can also enter a value in the midtone contrast box. And negative values, by the way, reduces contrast, and a positive value increases contrast. And increasing midtone contrast produces greater contrast in the midtones while tending to darken the shadows and lighten the highlights. So what's the meaning of black clip and white clip? Black clip and white clip is meaning that it specifies how greatly the shadows and highlights are clipped to the new extreme shadows level 0 and highlight level 255 colors in the image, and larger values produce an image with greater contrast. And be careful here in this point. Be careful, please, not to make the clipping values too large, because doing so reduces detail in the shadows or highlights. The intensity values are clipped and rendered as pure black or pure white, by the way. Thank you.